Hong Kong has been chosen as a prototype due to its special historical background and highly relevant political status. China has guaranteed Hong Kong the authority to self-govern in terms of economic and political systems for 50 years after the transfer from the British, which means in 2047, Hong Kong will lose its autonomous power and governed entirely under the Chinese Communist Party. In 2019, the extradition bill completely triggered the anger among the opposing parties who want to fight for their democratic identity and ignited a large amount of demonstrations. As a result, both Hong Kong City and mainland have been badly affected in terms of economy, criminal rate, etc. Hong Kong has always been pivotal in building the economy of China due to it being an international financial hub, commercial hub, and having a world-class port, hence serving as the only gateway for China to the international market. Till 2040, this immense impact of the unsettlement has caused Hong Kong to slowly crumble apart. Hong Kong used to be considered as a different entity from China. However, the Chinese government doesn't want to put the opposing parties in exile and to create a smaller Hong Kong. Therefore, to fulfill the demands of the protesters and resolve the ongoing chaos in the city, the Chinese government has proposed a levitated community concept that allows them to live in harmony as an entirety by allowing them to utilize the space in the sky and to retain their ideology and lifestyle. In Hong Kong, there are some housing called ghost apartments, which are considered undesirable for living in Hong Kong as it means properties who were previously inhabited by people who died of unnatural causes, such as murder and suicide. Along with the rising social problems, a substantial increase in ghost apartments has plagued most parts of the city. The government agreed to sell these apartments primarily as entry and connection points between the city below and above to the people who want to move into the levitated community at the minimum rate.
In order to provide freedom and democracy for dwellers to design and build their own space, 3D printing technology has been applied in the community as a main method. The 3D printing facilities are placed above roofs of existing buildings, serving also as an intersecting point for bridges converging from different directions and different levels. The construction waste has become a major consideration, as currently there are an abundance of waste materials composed of 95% public fields sitting in the landfills over the city. For construction, waste materials are recycled from the landfill facilities. After that, they are sorted out to differentiate and determine which materials are able to be used for 3D printing. The sorted materials are then transported to the 3D printing facilities. Synthetic building materials are printed atop the levitated city. The 3D printing process is operated in the control room based on the freedom of design by the community above. Printed materials are transported and built by the robotic arms attached along the bridge. These arms are retractable and able to spin around to achieve complex movements for all activities. Other than acting as a material producing infrastructure, the 3D printing facility also acts as an intersecting point where people gather and maybe hold activities and events. The 3D printing facility is supported mainly by the lift core with a concrete footing carrying all the vertical force, whereas the different level platforms are supported by lateral trusses spanning up to 20 meters. Most of Hong Kong's water supply comes from Dongjiang Water Station. Due to climate change, the water supply of the reservoir is slowly drying up. Along with an overwhelming demand for water, there's a dire need to gather water elsewhere for the city up the sky. The primary method to collect water is through rain. By using a rainwater harvesting system, water will be collected through a catchment area. After going through a process of filtration and sanitation, water will be distributed among households and shops. The harvested water would also be used for the vertical farm right below the water tanks. The vegetables, crops, and various products will be delivered by conveyor belts and gondolas to other parts of the city. The vertical farming system would allow for residents in the Levitated community to minimize dependency from outside sources for food. For energy, wind energy is used due to its high altitude, which is optimum to install wind turbines in addition to its need for high power usage to run the 3D printing facilities. These wind turbines are installed on bridges that are not parallel to any facade of a building to avoid disturbing residents who are already inhabiting the area. Different areas with distinct functions will no doubt be constructed based on the needs of the residents. The residential area will be composed of modular structures prefabricated by the 3D printing facilities and arranged in a somewhat random manner. An entire system then has been built up in the sky for the community above to operate. Structurally, long-span bridges are supported by steel trusses and a skeletal structure like column with bracings to support the bridges against lateral forces. Each of these columns will be placed on the rooftop of a building and is also a connection between two bridges of different levels that intersect. As for bridges that do not go over rooftops, horizontal beams spanning from the facades of the adjacent building will act as the main structure. To provide privacy for the residents of the existing buildings, a 10 to 15 meter gap is kept between the parallel bridge and building. The connection between ground level and the Levitated community involves going through the leaf calls of ghost apartment buildings. With ghost apartments itself acting as a transition point between the two cities, people from both the existing city and Levitated community are still able to interact with each other. Lifts are also installed in the 3D printing facilities to allow for people to commute between bridges. Other means of commute include the gondolas and slides to reduce overcrowding of the lifts. All the gondolas act also as a primary transport for the vertical farms.
As people start to gradually integrate into this Levitated community, people of two different parties are able to coexist despite their different political beliefs, building mutual respect and assistance. The distinct features of the existing bustling streets of Hong Kong is emulated up on the Levitated community, as the existing residents would be adamant to maintain their unique identity. The city above would further add to its already happening ambience, further highlighting the hectic nature of Hong Kong's residents. Fast forward into the year 2077, instead of just using ghost apartments as entry points, more buildings are willing to forego some parts in order to create better flexibility into the Levitated community, further fostering harmony among the two different parties. Hong Kong somehow manages to perpetuate itself, in spite and because of unpredictable human nature. Is this final state protopian, utopian, or dystopian?